Good morning, everyone. This is Diane Murray at Southern Art Gallery. And today we are working on this beautiful hibiscus painting for a class that I am teaching on color theory. I chose this because it's a great example of a split complementary color scheme. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go petal by petal. So let's get our mixtures ready. I have quinacridone violet. I have a mixture of a blue violet that I've made up using ultramarine blue and quinacridone magenta. So you can see right here, gamboge for the bright yellows. We're using lemon yellow, quin violet. I've also got some perylene green that I'm going to use. If you don't have that, you can easily make a dark green yourself. And I made a neutral out of the quinacridone violet and the perylene green, just to make a dark for the darker areas in here and for the real dark right here. This is indigo, which I just was actually mixing to see if I like that better for the darks, and here I may use some of that, or just Payne's gray. I used a bright leaf green here, which you can easily make with phthalo blue and lemon yellow. So we'll mix the colors as we go along as well. But, you know, we've got some beautiful complements here. We've got yellow, which is a complement of the violet, and then we've got the red violet and the blue violet, which is on either side of the violet. I think I'm going to drop that dark in first, just to get that out of the way. So let's do that. So let's make up a dark. Either we can use our dark blue mixture that we already have, our blue violet, and add a little. The easiest way to make a dark is just to add a little Payne's gray to it, or a little indigo, or a really dark pigment. I'm going to go ahead and put this in so that I like to put my darks in early, because it establishes a value range when you put your lightest lights in, or you save your lightest lights. This brush I'm using is an Escoda Perla. It's a wonderful synthetic detail brush. I use it a lot for when I'm painting details, because it has a lovely point on it. Okay, I'm going to fill that in. Got a little place there we want to go around. Dropping that in. Then this whole, you really have to just look at the shapes when you're painting, especially when you're painting flowers. Because if you think that you're painting a petal, it can actually mess you up. So it's better to just paint the shape. And now I'm going to lighten this just a tiny bit to go back up under here by adding a little quin violet, and they're really just in the shadow areas here, and we'll soften those later. I just wanted to get that primary dark in right there in the center, and I think that's good. Get that a little wetter, a little softer. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and drop in these dark petals here, and for that I'm going to use a color called perylene green, which is actually a black pigment, believe it or not, and that's masked. I did go ahead and mask out the highlights on this flower, and that's what you're seeing here. That's PBO. And I like to use that for my students so they can see where I've done the masking. Otherwise, sometimes it's really hard to tell what you've masked. And the edge of these beautiful leaves, and we don't want to just paint the whole thing, so let's add a little more water to that and make that a soft blend here. Blend that softly. And then we'll go down here on this one. And do a little over there. Okay, I'm liking that. That's the edge of that petal. There is a little bit of green there. Okay, and this comes behind this here, around this, right around this petal here. If you drop in your darker shapes, it helps to define, it's like a road map. It helps you define where you're going with your paint. This is a good bit darker right up under here. Leaves usually are darker right up in here. Soften some of that a bit. Wash it out. This green I painted in and then I masked over it. I like to do that. It helps me keep the definition. Okay, that's good for right now. We don't want that too harsh. Then we'll go on up here. And this actually has a violet in it, or a blue that's actually almost like reflecting onto that petal. That's really pretty. So we'll just go in around that. Again, remembering I've masked this out. Make that a little darker. You don't want it harsh. And then this is a petal coming up in here. Part of that. Then we have one up here which you cannot see. I don't think you can see it, but it is a somewhat greener. So I think we'll add a little brighter green to that. Maybe add a little leaf green. We normally paint with a limited palette, but in this color theory class, we're actually using a lot of different pigments. So we'll define that, and then we'll make that a little bit darker right there. And this is just the background, so it's not so critical that everything is perfect. But we do have a definite leaf here. Let's change the color a little bit just to get some variation. We'll drop that darker color in back here around this, which looks like it's a bud. It's also very dark inside. Connecting all these shapes. And then we'll push this one little leaf right here darker, just for some variation. Okay, I like that. So that's good for the leaves right now. So they've been established. The background, it was a dilute wash of the purple or the violet that I mixed up with the ultramarine blue and the quinacridone magenta. Makes a lovely, lovely violet. And I think I'm going to soften this whole thing. It's looking a little harsh through here. So I'll just run some water over that. So that's softer. And there. Okay. Now then. Now we'll let that, I think we'll step on down and maybe go right into this quinacridone magenta on this. You can do this one of two ways. I think that's Quin Violet. You could use a magenta and add a little bit of a blue or a Payne's Gray to it. But I'm going to go ahead and drop this just water in here. Although it's dirty, it'll show us where we're going, at least with this color. And then we'll transition. The key to painting flowers petals is to keep your place and to not lose where you are. Okay. And now this is going to be we're going to just drop this green right in here since this is all wet. And that's very model-y. So I'm just going to drop it right around the violet, and then we'll go back with that violet and that yellow in a minute when we get to that part. This is just there's actually a lot of violet in here also. So you have all these colors in each petal. It has all kind of different colors in each petal. So that's what makes this so incredibly beautiful. But let's keep that wet edge. So we don't get a hard line here. And define our petal so we know where we're going. Okay. Now we've got to drop in that lemon yellow right on the edge. And it's, of course, the lightest on the edge. Then we'll go back in and we'll actually get that darker later. This is almost white in here. That's masked, so that's the reason you're seeing that. This is very yellow here. This is called mingling when you do this. When you just mingle all these colors together, or charging. It's also called charging. Okay. A little too much water there. All right, so that'll be the first layer of that. Actually going to drop in some quinacridone magenta, which is a little bit brighter, especially right in here. And most of these have been masked, so we'll have to do this again whenever they come out. But we want it really soft. I want this really soft. It's pretty much that color. Let's get a little more of that violet, a little bit darker.